Not today, Torres. I will find you.
I'm Detective Marcus Rodriguez with the Dallas Police Department. Been working these streets for 14 years now. Started as patrol and worked up to detective through determination and what colleagues call an uncanny ability to read people. My superiors trust me with the toughest cases, and I've built a reputation for solving crimes others can't crack. My wife, Sarah Chen, works as a pediatric nurse at Dallas Children's Medical Center. We met 4 years ago when I was investigating a child misuse case at the hospital. Sarah provided crucial testimony that helped convict the perpetrator, and her courage in facing down an aggressive defense attorney impressed me almost as much as her compassion for young sufferers. She has this incredible ability to calm frightened children with gentle hands and a smile that could light up my darkest days. We live in a modest 2-story house in Richardson with a small backyard where Sarah tends her vegetable garden and I practice marksmanship on weekends. The neighborhood is quiet, filled with young families and retirees who wave when I come home in my unmarked cruiser. Life was perfect until about 2 months before everything went sideways. That's when I started noticing subtle changes in Sarah's behavior. She became distant, constantly checking her phone and making excuses to work late shifts. When I asked about overtime, she brushed off my concerns, claiming the hospital was understaffed. My detective instincts screamed something was wrong, but my love for Sarah made me want to believe her explanations. My partner, Jake Williams, has been with Dallas PD for 16 years. Former Army Ranger with dry humor and encyclopedic knowledge of the city's criminal underworld, Jake's the kind of partner who'd have your back in any firefight. That morning, as we patrolled southeast Dallas, Jake seemed unusually distracted, checking his phone more frequently than normal. "Everything okay, partner?" I asked as we sat outside a convenience store. Jake looked up, weathered face showing concern. "Just monitoring some chatter from informants. Word is Vincent Torres flew back from Mexico 3 days ago." I felt ice run through my veins at that name. Vincent Torres was a nightmare from my past. A sophisticated career criminal who'd managed to evade serious charges for years through intimidation, bribery, and cunning. 3 years ago, I'd been lead detective on a major case against Torres involving brutal home invasions that terrorized Dallas's wealthier neighborhoods. Torres wasn't your average street criminal. He was intelligent, educated, and ran multiple legitimate businesses as fronts for pill trafficking, extortion, human trafficking, and worse. He had a network of corrupt officials and intimidated civilians who kept him insulated from consequences. I'd come closer than anyone to bringing him down, gathering solid evidence and building what should have been an airtight case. But on the eve of Torres's arrest, my key witness, Tommy Garcia, a former associate who'd agreed to testify, was found dead in apparent self-destruction. Without his testimony, the entire case crumbled, and Torres walked away with expensive lawyers and that smirk I'll never forget. The case became the one that got away, haunting my otherwise impressive clearance rate. "How reliable is this information?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Solid. Multiple sources confirm he landed at DFW 2 days ago. He's keeping low profile, but he's definitely here." Jake's expression darkened. "Marcus, I know what you're thinking, but that case is ancient history now." "I'm not thinking anything," I interrupted, though we both knew it wasn't true. In my experience, men like Torres don't return to places where they've been exposed unless they have unfinished business. The radio crackled with a domestic disturbance call. As Jake responded and we headed toward the scene, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. Love you." Something felt off about the message. Sarah usually sent work-related texts from the hospital's communication system, but this came from her personal phone. The tone seemed too casual, too distant. Sarah always ended messages with something more personal, usually referencing dinner plans or an inside joke. "Everything okay?" Jake asked, noticing my distraction. "Yeah, just Sarah working another late shift," I replied, pocketing the phone. But my mind was already working the angles, applying detective skills to my own life. The timing of Torres's return, Sarah's recent behavior changes, and my growing unease were forming a pattern I didn't like. In police work, I've learned there are no coincidences, only connections you haven't discovered yet. The domestic disturbance turned out to be false alarm. Neighbors had misinterpreted an enthusiastic football discussion as violent argument. As we drove back toward our patrol area, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Dallas Children's Medical Center, and I answered expecting Sarah's voice. Instead, I heard Dr. Elena Martinez, Sarah's supervisor. "Hi, Marcus. Sorry to bother you at work, but I was wondering if Sarah's feeling better today." My stomach tightened. "Better?" She called in sick yesterday and today. I was checking to see if she'd be in tomorrow. She sounded pretty rough when she called. My mind raced. Sarah had told me she was working late shifts both days, not that she'd called in sick. I'm sure she'll be fine, I managed to say. I'll have her call you when she's feeling up to it. After ending the call, I sat in silence for several minutes. Jake, who had overheard the conversation, didn't need to ask what was wrong. When's the last time you actually saw Sarah leave for work? Jake asked gently. I thought back over the past few days. Sarah had been getting up early, getting dressed, and leaving before I was fully awake. I'd heard her moving around, seen her car gone when I left for work, and assumed she was at the hospital. But I realized I hadn't actually seen her in scrubs or watched her drive toward the medical center. I need to go home, I said. We'll swing by after we finish this shift, Jake replied. But Marcus, whatever's going on, don't jump to conclusions. There could be dozen innocent explanations. But my detective instincts were in full gear now, and every scenario I considered led to darker possibilities. The return of Vincent Torres, Sarah's lies about work, her recent distance. Pieces were forming a picture that made my blood run cold. We spent the rest of our shift responding to routine calls, but my mind was elsewhere. I found myself remembering details from the past month that had seemed insignificant at the time. Sarah asking unusual questions about my current cases, her interest in my daily schedule, and most concerning, her reaction when I'd mentioned seeing Torres's lawyer at the courthouse. When our shift ended, Jake and I drove to my house. Sarah's car wasn't in the driveway, even though she should have been home hours ago if she was really sick. I used my key to enter, calling Sarah's name as I walked through empty rooms. Jake waited in the living room while I searched for clues about Sarah's recent activities. In our bedroom, I found Sarah's hospital ID badge in her jewelry box, something she would never leave behind if actually going to work. In the kitchen, I discovered several takeout containers in the trash, meals for 2 people even though Sarah had been claiming to eat at the hospital. Most disturbing of all, I found a burner phone hidden in Sarah's dresser drawer, a cheap prepaid device she'd never mentioned. When I powered it on, I found a series of text messages from an unknown number that made my blood freeze. Everything is ready for tomorrow. He suspects nothing. The plan hasn't changed. Stick to the script. Once this is over, you'll never have to see him again. I showed the messages to Jake, who read them with growing concern. Marcus, this doesn't necessarily mean what you think. Maybe she's planning some kind of surprise, or... Read the last message again, I interrupted, my voice deadly calm. The final message, sent that morning, was brief but chilling. It happens tonight. No more delays. You know what he took from me? Jake looked up from the phone, his expression grim. Marcus, we need to call this in if Sarah's in danger. From who? We don't even know who sent these messages. But I had a strong suspicion. I explained my theory to Jake. Vincent Torres had returned to Dallas not for new criminal opportunities, but for revenge against the detective who'd come closest to destroying him. Unable to attack me directly, without bringing down massive police attention, Torres had found a more subtle approach, targeting what I valued most. He's been watching us, learning our patterns, I said, pacing the living room. He approached Sarah somehow, maybe threatened her or blackmailed her, and forced her to cooperate in some plan against me. Jake nodded slowly. The question is, what kind of plan? And where is Sarah now? My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah's regular number. Hey babe, feeling much better. Going to meet a friend for dinner. Home late. Don't wait up. But I knew Sarah's regular phone was sitting on our kitchen counter, powered off. Someone else was sending messages from a clone number. Someone who wanted me to believe everything was normal while they executed their plan. Jake, I need you to run a trace on these burner phone messages while I try to figure out where Sarah might be, I said, my training taking over. And see if you can pull surveillance footage from the hospital parking lot. If Sarah hasn't been at work, maybe cameras caught where she actually went. As Jake made calls to set up traces and surveillance reviews, I studied a map of Dallas, trying to think like Vincent Torres. Where would a careful, paranoid criminal take someone he was using as leverage? It would need to be somewhere secure, isolated, but close enough to the city for easy access. I remembered that during my original investigation, Torres had owned several properties around Dallas through shell companies. Most were legitimate businesses, but there were a few that seemed to serve no obvious purpose. Warehouses, small office buildings, even a defunct restaurant in an industrial area near Love Field Airport. I pulled out my case files from 3 years ago, documents I'd kept despite the case being closed. As I reviewed my notes and surveillance photos, I found what I was looking for, A small warehouse in an industrial district officially owned by a company that existed only on paper, linked to Torres through complex financial transactions. "Jake," I called out, "I think I know where they are." But as I prepared to leave for the warehouse, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Sarah's number, the real one sitting on my kitchen counter. I answered and heard a voice that made my hand tighten around the phone. "Hello, Detective Rodriguez," Vincent Torres said, his voice smooth and confident. "I think it's time we had a conversation." "Where is she?" My voice was ice cold, every ounce of police training focused on staying calm while my world tilted. Torres's laugh was soft and mocking. "Sarah? Oh, she's fine for now. In fact, she's right here with me. Helping me with a little project, aren't you, sweetheart?" I heard Sarah's voice in the background, strained and frightened. "Marcus, don't come looking for me. He says he'll—" The line went quiet before Torres came back on. "Sorry about that. She's a bit emotional today. Now, Detective, here's what's going to happen. You and your partner are going to take a nice drive through the warehouse district near Love Field. When you see a certain speeding car, you are going to pull it over. And then you'll understand why I've been planning this for 3 years. If you hurt her..." "You'll what? Arrest me? You tried that once, remember?" Torres's voice hardened. "You destroyed my life, Detective. You cost me everything I'd built, turned my own people against me, forced me to flee to Mexico like a common criminal. Now it's your turn to lose everything." The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen staring at the phone while Jake watched with growing concern. "Marcus, whatever he said, we need to call for backup. This is obviously a trap." "Of course it's a trap," I replied, my mind already working through scenarios. "But Sarah's life depends on us walking into it. He's counting on that." I quickly filled Jake in on the conversation as we gathered equipment and headed for our patrol car. As we drove toward the warehouse district, I tried to piece together Torres's plan. He was too smart to simply ambush 2 armed police officers. There had to be something more complex at work. "He wants us to pull over a specific car," I said as we entered the industrial area. "That means he's orchestrated some scenario where we'll be forced to make a choice, probably between following procedure and saving Sarah." Jake checked his service weapon and radio. "Whatever happens, we stick together. And Marcus, when we see Sarah, don't let emotions take over. Torres is counting on you making mistakes." We patrolled the warehouse district for nearly an hour before spotting it. A dark sedan speeding through narrow streets between industrial buildings. I activated our lights and siren, and the car immediately pulled over as if the driver had been expecting us. As we approached the vehicle, I could see 2 figures in the front seats. A woman with dark hair who looked like Sarah from behind, and a man in the passenger seat. But something felt wrong about the whole situation. The car had pulled over too easily, and both occupants sat perfectly still, not showing usual nervous movements of people who'd been caught speeding. "License and registration," I said through the driver's window, trying to maintain professional composure while studying the woman's face. It was Sarah, but something was terribly wrong. Her eyes were glassy and unfocused, and she moved with sluggish, deliberate motions of someone under the influence of pills. The man in the passenger seat turned toward me with a cold smile. It wasn't Vincent Torres, but I recognized him from surveillance photos. Miguel Santos, one of Torres's known associates with a history of violence. "Unfortunately, you're late," Miguel said with a laugh, reaching into his jacket. Jake, who had been approaching the passenger side, immediately drew his weapon. "Hands where I can see them." Miguel's hand emerged from his jacket holding not a weapon, but a small remote control device. His smile widened as he pressed a button. That's when I saw Sarah's back. Strapped to her spine, barely visible beneath her jacket, was a small explosive device with a digital timer that had just activated. The red numbers showed 3 o'clock and were counting down rapidly. "Sarah," I shouted, but she barely responded, her head lolling to one side as if fighting to stay conscious. Miguel's voice was calm and mocking. "Remote detonator, pressure-sensitive trigger, and enough C4 to turn this car into scrap metal. Torres wanted to make sure you understood the stakes, Detective. Your wife has approximately 2 minutes and 45 seconds to live." My training kicked in, mind automatically calculating distances, timing, and options. The explosive device was sophisticated, not something Miguel could have built himself, which meant Torres had invested serious resources in this revenge plot. "What do you want?" I demanded, even as I began moving slowly toward the driver's door. "Torres wants you to make a choice," Miguel replied. "You can try to save your wife, but the moment anyone touches that car door or tries to remove the device, it detonates instantly. or you can step back and watch the timer count down. Either way, Sarah dies, and you live with the knowledge that your investigation of Vincent Torres cost you everything. Jake kept his weapon trained on Miguel while speaking into his radio, calling for bomb disposal and medical teams, but I knew they wouldn't arrive in time. The timer now showed 2:15 and counting. I studied the device on Sarah's back, my detective training allowing me to notice details others might miss. The explosive was real, but something about the setup didn't feel right. Torres was too intelligent to create a plan that simply resulted in Sarah's passing. He wanted me to suffer, to be destroyed psychologically. That meant there had to be a way out, some solution that Torres expected me to find and reject. "Sarah," I said softly, moving closer to the car. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes focused on me with great effort. "Marcus," she whispered. He said, "If you found the real device, basement warehouse, the real bomb is—" "What real device?" I asked, my heart racing as the timer showed 1:45. Sarah's voice was barely audible. "Children's hospital. Basement." Miguel laughed and pressed another button on his remote. "Time's up for conversation, detective. Make your choice." But I had already made my choice. As the timer hit 1:30, I turned to Jake with absolute determination. "The device on Sarah is a decoy. Torres's real plan is happening somewhere else." My mind raced through the possibilities. Torres had used Sarah as bait to get me to this location, but the real target was something that would cause me even more pain than losing my wife. And then I realized what it was. "Jake, call the hospital. Torres isn't trying to eliminate Sarah. He's trying to keep us here while he attacks the children's ward." Jake's eyes widened as he understood. Torres knew that Sarah's greatest fear was damage coming to the children she worked with, and my greatest weakness was my inability to save innocent sufferers. By keeping us trapped at this fake bomb scenario, Torres was ensuring we couldn't stop his real attack. As the timer on Sarah's back hit 1 o'clock, I made a decision that went against every instinct I had. I stepped away from the car. "Marcus, what are you doing?" Jake shouted. "Trusting my wife," I replied. "Sarah, when the timer hits 0, duck down as far as you can." Sarah nodded weakly, and I could see in her eyes that she understood what I was really telling her. The device was a fake, designed to look terrifying but built to create sound and smoke rather than actual destruction. Torres wanted us to panic, to make desperate choices, to destroy ourselves trying to save someone who was never really in danger. As the timer reached 0, I threw myself over the car's hood, wrapping my arms around Sarah just as the device activated. Instead of an explosion, there was a loud bang and a burst of smoke, a sophisticated pyrotechnic display designed to simulate a bomb blast. I pulled Sarah from the car as Jake moved to subdue Miguel, who was staring in shock at my successful call of Torres's bluff. "How did you know?" Sarah asked, her voice clearing as whatever pill she'd been given began to wear off. "Because Torres isn't trying to eliminate you," I replied, helping her stand. "He's trying to destroy me psychologically, and the only way to do that is force me to choose between saving you and saving the children at your hospital." My phone buzzed with a text message from Torres. "Very good, detective, but you're still too late." I looked at Jake with grim determination. "We need to get to the hospital now." But as we prepared to leave, I realized Torres had planned for this possibility too. Our patrol car's tires had been slashed while we were focused on the fake bomb, and Miguel's car was equipped with a eliminate switch that had disabled the engine. We were stranded in the warehouse district, exactly as Torres had planned, while somewhere across town, the real attack was beginning. My phone rang as Jake and I worked frantically to call for backup transportation. The caller ID showed Torres's burner number. "Congratulations on solving my little puzzle, detective," Torres said, his voice smooth with satisfaction. "But as you've probably realized, you're exactly where I want you. Too far away to interfere with my real business." "What did you do?" I demanded, supporting Sarah as she continued to recover from the sedative. "Nothing yet, but in approximately 30 minutes, during the evening shift change at Dallas Children's Medical Center, there's going to be a tragic accident in the pediatric intensive care unit. Something about a gas leak, I believe. Very sad, very preventable. If only there had been someone there to evacuate the children in time." My blood ran cold. The PICU was where the hospital's most vulnerable patients were kept. Premature babies, children recovering from major surgeries, kids whose lives depended on constant medical monitoring. "You fool," I whispered. Now, detective. Language. especially in front of your lovely wife, who I'm sure would be devastated to lose all those little patients she's worked so hard to save. Torres paused, letting the words sink in. Of course, you could still stop this. All you have to do is publicly announce that your investigation of me 3 years ago was corrupt, that you planted evidence and intimidated witnesses, hold a press conference, destroy your reputation, and I'll call off tonight's activities. I looked at Sarah, who had heard every word. Her eyes were filled with horror at the thought of children in danger, but also with fierce determination that I recognized from the day she'd testified against the child misuser. Don't do it, Marcus, Sarah said firmly. There has to be another way. Torres laughed. 28 minutes, detective. I'd start thinking quickly if I were you. The line went dead just as backup units arrived, summoned by Jake's radio calls. I quickly briefed the responding officers while commandeering the fastest patrol car available. But Sarah stepped forward, still shaky, but resolute. I know the hospital better than anyone, the gas lines, the building layout, the security systems, and more importantly, I think Torres's plan isn't just about the gas leak. What do you mean? While he held me, I heard him talking to someone on the phone. He mentioned something about making the detective choose and 2 simultaneous events. Marcus, I think he's planning attacks on multiple locations. My stomach dropped. Torres wasn't just targeting the hospital. He was creating a scenario where I'd have to choose which group of innocent people to save. Where else? I asked. Sarah closed her eyes, trying to remember Torres's exact words. He mentioned something about where it all started and the place that made the detective think he was untouchable. My mind raced through locations connected to my original investigation of Torres, and then I realized Roosevelt Elementary School. 3 years ago, my key witness, Tommy Garcia, had been a janitor there. It was where I'd first interviewed him, where Tommy had agreed to testify against Torres, and where Tommy's young daughter had attended school. He's targeting the school, I said, during the evening after-school program when working parents pick up their kids. Jake nodded grimly. So we have 2 locations, probably 2 different types of attacks designed to happen simultaneously. I looked at my watch. 24 minutes until Torres's deadline. Even with police response times, we couldn't cover both locations adequately. Torres had planned this perfectly, forcing me into an impossible choice between 2 groups of innocent sufferers. But I'd spent 3 years thinking about Vincent Torres, studying his methods, understanding his psychology. Torres was arrogant, believing himself smarter than the police. But that arrogance was also his weakness. He had to be somewhere close enough to monitor both attacks, somewhere he could watch my choice and savor his victory. Jake, take a team to the hospital. I'll handle the school, I decided. But Torres will be watching both locations. Look for surveillance points, rooftops, abandoned buildings. He'll want a front row seat for this. As I drove toward Roosevelt Elementary, my phone buzzed with another message from Torres. 18 minutes, detective. Have you decided which children deserve to live? I didn't respond to the text. Instead, I called the school's main office and was relieved to hear Principal Dorothy Williams. Mrs. Williams, this is Detective Rodriguez. I need you to implement lockdown procedures immediately and evacuate any children still in the building. I explained the situation quickly, while driving through Dallas traffic at dangerous speeds. Mrs. Williams didn't waste time with questions. I could hear her announcing the lockdown over the school's PA system, even as we spoke. I pulled into the school parking lot with 15 minutes to spare. The building looked normal from the outside, but my experience told me Torres's attack would be subtle, designed to look like an accident until it was too late to stop. I approached the building cautiously, service weapon drawn, eyes scanning for signs of tampering. As I moved around the building's perimeter, I found what I was looking for: fresh tool marks around the natural gas meter and a small electronic device attached to the gas line. The device was sophisticated, not just a simple bomb, but a computerized system designed to create a massive gas leak and then trigger an ignition source. I could see a timer counting down, 12:47, 12:46, 12:45. I photographed the device and called the bomb squad, but knew they wouldn't arrive in time. I studied the mechanism carefully, noting it was designed to be tamper-proof, but I noticed something else. The device was receiving a wireless signal, indicated by a small, blinking LED. Torres was maintaining remote control over the attack, probably watching from nearby. I called Jake. Status on the hospital? We found a similar device in the basement near the PICU gas lines. Bomb squad is on scene, but Marcus, this thing is beyond their expertise. We're going to need the FBI's explosive ordnance team. How long? 20 minutes minimum. I looked at my watch. 11:23 remaining. Jake, I need you to do something that's going to sound crazy. I explained my plan quickly. Torres had created a scenario where I had to choose between two locations, but Torres himself had to be close enough to monitor both attacks. That meant he was somewhere with line of sight to both the hospital and the school, probably with high-powered surveillance equipment. There's only one building that fits, I concluded. The Renaissance Tower downtown, 26th floor or higher, southeast corner office. My plan required precise timing and acting that would make Torres believe everything was going according to his design. With 9 minutes remaining, I called the media. This is a Detective Marcus Rodriguez with Dallas PD. I'm at Roosevelt Elementary School and need news crews here immediately for an emergency press conference. I knew Torres would be monitoring police communications and media frequencies, expecting to watch my public humiliation. As the first news van arrived, I positioned myself directly in front of the school's main entrance, where Torres would have a clear view from his downtown surveillance post. Ladies and gentlemen, I began speaking into the cluster of microphones. I'm here to address serious allegations about my conduct during a criminal investigation 3 years ago. The investigation of Vincent Torres was conducted improperly, I continued, watching my own reputation crumble on live television. Evidence was tampered with, witnesses were coerced, and I allowed personal ambition to compromise the integrity of the case. My phone buzzed with a message from Torres. Very good, detective, continue. What Torres didn't know was that I was wearing a wire, and every word was being recorded. More importantly, Jake was using my GPS location and the live news feed to triangulate Torres's position in the Renaissance Tower. The case against Vincent Torres should have been dismissed, I continued. I have let my department down, the city down, and the sufferers down. I continued my false confession for another minute, then stepped away from the microphones as if overcome with shame. The news crews continued filming as I walked back toward my patrol car, playing the role of a broken detective. What the cameras didn't show was me opening my laptop and connecting to the Dallas PD surveillance network. Jake had been busy during my press conference using facial recognition software to scan the windows of the Renaissance Tower. Marcus, we've got him, Jake's voice came through my earpiece. 27th floor, southeast corner, 3 men inside, surveillance equipment, and what looks like remote detonation controls. I looked at my watch. 30 seconds until Torres's deadline. My phone rang exactly at the deadline. Beautiful performance, detective, Torres said, his voice filled with satisfaction. I particularly enjoyed the part about police corruption. Very convincing. The children are safe. That's all that matters, I replied, maintaining my defeated tone. Oh, but we're not quite finished. You see, I want to make sure you understand the full scope of your failure. Look around the school parking lot, detective. I looked up and saw several black SUVs pulling into the parking lot. Torres's men arriving to ensure I couldn't somehow reverse my confession. And if you look toward the hospital, Torres continued, you'll see similar vehicles arriving there. My associates are going to make sure your sacrifice was permanent. But Torres had made a critical error. By sending his men to both locations, he had revealed the full extent of his operation and given police multiple targets to arrest simultaneously. Torres, I said, dropping the defeated tone and speaking with cold authority, you made one mistake. Oh, and what's that, detective? You assumed I was the same man you fought 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I was a good detective who wanted to catch a bad guy. Today, I'm a great detective who's about to destroy you. I raised my hand and made a cutting gesture across my throat, the signal for Jake to execute the coordinated arrests. Across the city, federal marshals breached the office in the Renaissance Tower while SWAT teams surrounded Torres's men at both the school and hospital. The explosive devices were simultaneously disabled by bomb disposal experts who had been standing by, waiting for my signal. Torres's voice over the phone shifted from confidence to rage. You think you've won? Even if you arrest me, you've still destroyed your own reputation. Actually, I replied, that confession was made under duress to save innocent lives, and the entire operation was recorded as evidence of your terrorist activities. I think my reputation will survive just fine. I could hear shouting and commotion through the phone as federal agents stormed Torres's command center. You see, Torres, the difference between you and me is that I learned from our last encounter. This time, I didn't just build a case against you. I built a trap that used your own arrogance against you. The phone went dead as Torres was taken into custody. Jake's voice came through my earpiece. Marcus, we've got all of them. Torres, his bomb maker, his surveillance team, and the men he sent to both locations, and the serial numbers you photographed traced back to Torres's purchase records from 6 months ago. We've got him cold. The investigation that started with Torres's revenge plot became the largest organized crime takedown in Dallas history. Torres's surveillance equipment had recorded everything. His planning sessions, communications, even video of him building the bombs. We discovered he'd been running a homicide for hire business, eliminating witnesses in federal cases across multiple states. 23 confirmed homicides over 5 years. During interrogation, Torres's attorney negotiated a cooperation deal. In exchange for avoiding execution, Torres provided detailed information about the Network, a sophisticated organization providing criminal services nationwide. His cooperation led to simultaneous raids across 4 states, arresting 37 operatives. 6 months later, I received the Medal of Valor. But the real victory wasn't recognition. It was knowing families who'd waited years for justice finally got closure. Torres received life without parole plus consecutive sentences. He's in federal maximum security, spending 23 hours daily in solitary confinement. Sarah and I are stronger than ever, expecting our first child. I transferred to juvenile division because after everything that happened, I want to prevent kids from becoming sufferers instead of just solving crimes after they occur. Torres tried to destroy my life by attacking what I valued most. Instead, he only made me more determined to protect those values. Justice isn't just about catching criminals. It's about protecting the innocent and ensuring those who corrupt the system face consequences. The badge sits ready for tomorrow's work, but tonight belongs to Sarah and our growing family. Torres is where he belongs, the network is destroyed, and justice prevailed.